Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Technocratic Podcast. Today, our guest is Lindsay Frazier. Lindsay is an experienced product executive who spent a number of years leading teams and building products across multiple industries, including contact center software, the mobile industry, marketing, and so much more. I met Lindsay through a friend and was immediately impressed by her depth of knowledge in product and her experience in a number of different roles that I think have given her really good perspective on modern product management. Today, we're going to dive into a bunch of different topics with Lindsay, including how to transform product organizations, which is one of my favorite topics. So welcome to the podcast, Lindsay. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Awesome. So thanks so much for joining. And as always, I'm going to turn it over to my trusty sidekick, Mishka McCowan. He'll dig into some fun get to know you questions to get us warmed up. Take it away, Mishka.
All right. So these are, as you probably saw, because you mentioned you listened to a couple of the other episodes, these are this or that questions. So let's just dive right in. Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny?
Bugs Bunny.
That's a new one. Yeah, Bugs Bunny, Mishka, for sure. Those classic cartoons.
Bugs Bunny. Grew up on the Saturday morning cartoons. Sweet or spicy?
Sweet. My husband and son love spicy, and I did not get on that train. So I can have a couple bites of something sweet, and I'm good.
You can just look at me and tell what my answer is going to be. It's got to be spicy, no question about it. Mishka, what about you?
I've got a bunch of candy bars sitting right here to let my answer talk for me.
Nice.
New York pizza or Chicago pizza? Thin or thick?
New York. You got to fold it when you eat it, right?
No, yeah, exactly.
No, gotta go deep dish. Deep dish. That's the only correct answer. All right. Form or function?
Function.
Yeah, function. Engineering speak, right? Function.
Yeah.
Okay. Comedy or horror?
Comedy. 1,000%. I'm not a horror person.
What was the last horror movie you guys have seen?
The last time I had to do security awareness training.
That was good, Mishka.
I did watch the movie Get Out.
That was good. I thought it had a good moment in it, right?
That was like intellectual horror.
That's a great way to phrase it. Intellectual horror. Sorry, Mishka, go ahead.
Last one. Book or movie?
Movie.
Yeah.
We've got a nice setup in our basement to watch movies. So we like to do family movie night.
You guys have the projector screens and all that surround sound going on? Yeah. Nice. I have a question for you, which is a little bit more difficult than Mishka's. What is the best advice anybody's given you about being a product leader or being in product management?
This isn't specific to product, but a really good piece of advice I got, because ultimately being a leader is dealing with people, right? So you have to be really good about how to deal with people. And so I got a piece of advice. If you're in a conversation with somebody, whether it's in person or whether it's over a Zoom call, and if things are getting a little heated, a little contentious, you have a little trick, and you can do this off camera or you can do it under the table, but you take your hand and you go like this and you flip it over, and it trains your brain to say, how can I help you? And so you kind of reframe the conversation to my way, my way, my way. I need to be heard, as opposed to let's pause for a second. Let's get everybody's input. Let me really empathize with what you're trying to say, right? If it's being contentious. And so I love that little tidbit of information about kind of dealing with people, especially when you're in a tough situation or tough conversation.
That's a great little trick. Hold your hand out like that. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, you don't have to do it like so somebody could see it. You just you do it subtly, that it kind of flips your brain a little bit. Yeah.
That is really that's a good psychological hack. You're dropping like nuggets of wisdom already. Like we already barely got into it. This is cool. Let me ask this question. Like I was looking at your background, and I think you actually started in venture capital, or if I'm not mistaken, right? How did you start there and then get into product?
It's a bit of a long and winding road, as I'm sure a lot of folks
Yeah.
ended up in products. So, kind of bear with me. So I was a finance major in college, thought I was going to go work on Wall Street in New York. Kind of got a taste of that lifestyle and said, nope, not really for me. So I went back to my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, but found this amazing hedge fund that had a VC arm. And so I was a venture capital research associate, got to look at, this was during the dot-com boom of late 90s, early 2000s. So everybody was having a website and everybody had a great idea for a
Right.
website, right? So I got to review all those proposals. And during that time, the company actually invested in a company that I became like employee number 5 of. So got to join this internet startup. It was called Handango. It no longer exists. It was selling mobile software it was software to PDAs and handheld devices, like
Oh, cool.
7 years before the iPhone existed. We
Like
were
Blackberries and
Yep.
Palms and stuff.
Blackberries,
Like,
Palms, Handsprings, Microsoft Pocket PC,
right.
Symbian devices. So really kind of cutting edge stuff, but they were these tiny little programs. It was like a improved calendar application, like really basic.
Okay.
But ton of fun. It was well funded, got great leadership, amazing environment. So they hired, a bunch of kids right out of college that had a lot of high potential, but then they also hired really strong leaders and they became our mentors. And so I was able to get to do marketing and business development and operations. And then ultimately we had a product. But if you ask me like waterfall agile, what a sprint was, I would have no idea, right? We were all just kind of figuring it out on the fly.
Nobody did back in those days. Yeah.
So that run ended. I moved to the East Coast in 2007
Okay.
and got into the mobile space. So still kind of keeping with that mobile background. I was doing SMS, mobile applications, mobile websites, things like that. And then through a series of acquisitions, again, kind of covering marketing, product, operations, really well-rounded kind of background. Through a couple acquisitions, I landed at Genesis, which is a leader in the contact center space. So as the company sizes grew, my responsibilities grew. But I love that kind of well-rounded background. So I fell into this really one of my favorite teams to work with. We were called solutions management. So we were kind of partners with product management at that time. We were doing sales enablement. We were doing market research. We were kind of setting the strategy for the products. But we realized that without kind of that direct authority or working with the engineering teams, we didn't have the impact that we needed to have. So we ended up dissolving that team. Half the group went to product marketing, half the group went to product management. So that's when I kind of found my way squarely.
That's interesting.
More traditional product management.
That's really interesting to me because I always wondered how much being in marketing helps somebody be in product. Do you think it is helpful? Is that something that helped you in your kind of journey there?
Yeah, I mean, it worked for me, right? So I didn't have a coding background. I was proud of myself for writing SQL queries at some point, right? Like that was kind of the extent of my path. I didn't go from engineering to product. I went from marketing to operations. But I do think it gave me that perspective of kind of that cross-functional aspect of high-performing companies, high-performing teams, and how, I love that when product can be the center of that, but appreciate all of the other departments, that you have to work with, right? You can build a product, but if you don't have marketing, you can't sell it. If you don't have finance, you can't bill for it. You don't have sales, you can't sell it, right? So it benefited me. I mean, there's certainly a lot of paths to product. That just happened to be mine.
Yep. When you first got into product, did you have a mentor to help you learn the ropes, or were you just thrown into it?
A little bit. I had more kind of a couple mentors along the way that I would, nothing super official, just, some were managers, some were outside that. And I would just absorb as much as I could. For me, again, it was absorbing maybe less about tactical product management and more about general leadership and how to manage teams. Because again, it kind of ultimately comes back to you're managing people. It always
That's
kind
right.
of bristled. I didn't like it when we were talking about resources, right? You do resource planning, resource management. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, how many resources are on that engineering team? It's like, well, these are people,
I
right?
got I got another version of that for you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
One time somebody came up to me and very well-meaning guy, and he was talking about a team in Eastern Europe, an engineering team, and he called it the captive team. And I was like, what does that mean? He's like, yeah, as a captive, the captive team, well, as if we've imprisoned them or something. But yeah, that's funny. Um, it was weird. When I first got into product in the early 2000s, there wasn't that much about it out there, like material, helpful, kind of instruction and stuff. And it was all just like you had to like know some people who were practicing the art of product in the right way. And I felt like product in a lot of, I don't know if you have the same thought, but it seems like it was in the 2010s when product really exploded as a discipline where companies were like, we need a product leader. Before that, it was just like, give it to IT, and the IT
Mhm.
people might be fixing laptops, but the way the business thinks about it, they were like, well, IT's supposed to do all the product stuff, and they're busy doing like infrastructure or whatever. Was that your kind of experience as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think by the time I was more kind of squarely in that product management role, it was a little bit more well defined. I think
Mhm.
where I was at though, we kind of went through a couple cycles of trying to do some formal training. We were trying to move from waterfall to agile. We were
Yeah,
trying to have this organizational change, and we had to go through it a couple times before it actually stuck. um,
yeah,
and and that it was really we had to shift from an engineering led company to a product led company. So I think I kind of came
right,
in, during that transition where the value of product
yeah.
management was really getting
That makes sense. And then eventually you got into the executive ranks. How did you make that leap?
just kind of natural evolution. Looking after a couple specific products, and then it grew to a portfolio of products, and then just kind of promotions along the way, and
Hmm.
getting a little bit broader team. I actually had the product operations team as well under me for a little while, which was near and dear to my
Yeah,
heart because I'm analytical. I love process. I love implementing process. I
yeah,
like things that can follow a kind of standard methodology and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, then you tweak it, right? So I really
yeah.
enjoyed that aspect as well. So that's kind of how I helped kind of grow the team and influence in other ways beyond just developing products.
Yeah. How would you define, how should people think of product officer? Because I hear people talking about it online a lot, my friends, all that. I don't quite understand exactly the right definition of it. Like, what is it to you, I guess?
Yeah, I found it as a support and guidance role for the product management team. So tactically, it was making sure the cadence of planning happens, right? So we had a quarterly planning cycle, right, where we would update the roadmap.
Hmm.
It was the tool management. So whether it's AHA or Product Board or whatever tools, or Jira, making sure those products have what the product managers need, that the integrations are set up. And then it's kind of the reporting out, right? Um,
Right.
are we, yeah, how are we doing on our throughput and our capacity? Because in my case, we didn't have a full slate of scrum master or team coach or even product owner. Like the product manager kind of did all of that.
Right.
And so we relied a lot on the product ops team to help us with with the metrics and with the reports on how we were
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Product ops, sometimes some companies love it. Other companies, I'm not sure if they understand it. But in any case, so you made the leap into executive ranks, and I'm curious, like, kind of like, what was the most challenging thing once you got to that level where you were part of the ELT and you're making all these big decisions and you're interacting with the CEO, the CFO, and the CTO, and all those folks. What was like the biggest thing learning for you to make that successful?
Yeah, so I would just to clarify. So I was really, kind of within the one of the specific business units at Genesis. I wasn't necessarily on the Genesis ELT. I don't want
Sure, sure.
don't want to
Yeah.
oversell that, but yeah, absolutely working with the leadership that was running that, multi-million dollar business unit, billion-dollar business unit. So I think it was. yeah, continually learning to manage up,
Mm,
and being able to solve my own problems, right?
mm,
As opposed to just bringing management problems, right? You've got to bring a solution
right.
or a mitigation plan.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
really kind of honing in on that ability. I think having a strong opinion about like guiding principles, so it's easier to say no to things, because often you'd find, especially, really passionate leaders would, especially folks that were involved in sales deals, right? They'd go in front of sales or in front of a customer and say,
Yeah.
absolutely, we can deliver that. And then product has to, fulfill that promise. And so being able to manage when that happens, that no, we can't do it, or here's why, or here's, here's the roadmap that we set. If we, do this one thing that just because you're the GM and you want to do this feature, right? Here's
Mm,
the impact of that.
right.
Being able to be comfortable with those types of conversations and have confidence in your roadmap and
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah. Confidence is key. Absolutely at that level, for sure. You can have all the data in the world that kind of like defines your like, hypothesis, but you got to deliver it in a certain way. That seems like it goes a long way in the executive ranks. The other thing that seems like it's important for product leaders is like the articulation of their product strategy seems to be really important, or the business case that they're working on, the roadmap that they're working, the way they kind of frame it. Definitely seen some product leaders who are very good at the sort of nuts and bolts of product, but then they get to the executive ranks, they can't simplify it down. Like they can't tell a simple story of the roadmap. They'll like go through every single like 15 different items on the roadmap, and it's like that's not what the executives want to necessarily hear about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that it's like if somebody is new going into the executive ranks, they were a product manager before, become a VP of product or something, like how did they learn this ability to frame and message and articulate in simple ways to the executive ranks? Like, how did you learn to do that, for example?
Trial and error, probably, to some extent, right?
Yeah,
Seeing what
yeah.
lands, learning from others that do that well. And so I really started thinking about in themes, right? And you can't have, 7 themes in a quarter or a year or 3 years, right? You need to really kind of boil that down. And so that's, kind of, I guess, my analytical nature. I would think about, um, you know, what are these key themes that we need to do to stay competitive, you know, make sure it's secure, it's
Mhm.
stable, it's scalable, all that good stuff. And meet our customers' needs. So, there was, I think, grouping those and thinking about that as a framework made it a little bit easier to talk through.
Yeah,
Again, as opposed to 50 bullet points of
yeah.
here's tactically what we're going to get done.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was definitely watching other good executives do their thing and learning from sitting with them. And the frameworks thing, you said that word, that's interesting. Frameworks definitely help a lot. My previous boss, she used the Gartner framework, which is now completely escaping my mind, but I think it's run, grow, transform. I'm sure you've heard of these different frameworks. And that's a good way to kind of like express yourself to an executive group is within one of these types of frameworks. I mean, there's so many of them out there. Are there frameworks that you particularly like or that helped you in terms of how you structured your thoughts or communicated that to executives?
Nothing specific. I don't think that I would point to, but we would think about the maturity of where
Mm,
the product was. So we had a portfolio full of products at
right.
Genesis, and so in different products were at different stages of maturity, and so that would influence maybe whether you're focusing more of your work on tech debt versus innovation and
Right.
features versus security versus just maintenance, right? And when can you kind of
Hmm.
wind down the
Yeah.
support and reallocate the people, maybe to a product that needs more growth.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought about it like
Yeah.
that. Again, we hired a couple consultants. I think Bain came in with their framework, didn't
Of
didn't really
course.
stick. Like I said, it took us a couple of cycles to really
Yeah.
transform
Yeah.
the business and how we worked.
Yeah. I like the idea of frameworks, but not in a way that take over everything. But one kind of qualitative framework, one quantitative framework. I think that helps to, it's just like a good way to like view the product situation. You know, it's like multiple angles. And I find like boards, you have all these different characters in boards, for example, finance people and product people and tech people, and you want to show them different angles. I find it useful for that kind of thing. Um, when you were going through this sort of like process of running this big portfolio of products, and you had, I'm sure, so much input coming in from all sorts of different stakeholders. You were just talking about like tech debt versus new product features and innovation versus securities debt and all that. How do you kind of balance all of that? Like, what's your kind of personal approach to that?
Yeah, so we tried to apply for a while something that was more analytical and qualitative or quantitative, right? We would put a
Hmm.
score on things, and we realized
Right.
it didn't sit well with
Didn't
us
work.
as a team.
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't that easy. You couldn't boil it down to a number and then rank the numbers. So
Yeah.
we would, again, kind of going back to the where are we with this product? Does it need to innovate quickly and grow at the expense maybe of scalability or
Hmm.
tech debt, right? We're okay taking on more
Hmm.
tech debt versus the alternative. So we were trying to manage both an on-premise product as well as cloud products. And so we, drastically shifted
That's
resources
interesting.
to
Yeah.
grow the cloud product. I think as we got better with our metrics and our measurement, we could see where, kind of categorize the work that we were doing. So we could look back and say, okay, well, last quarter we spent X percent on tech debt and X percent on security,
Yeah.
percent on new features. And we would say, does that feel right for this product? Right.
Yeah.
And then we could, kind of use that to tweak it going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there times when, is there ever a time in any product maturity cycle where you can say, hey, let's just ignore tech debt stuff. Let's put security to the side. Let's go all in with new feature innovation and, I don't know, get the 10 most important features out the door as fast as we possibly can, or in sort of a mature product. Is there ever a time to do that in your opinion?
I don't I don't think I would approach it that way. I think
Yeah.
you're going to just create more trouble for yourself in the future. I think there's
Right.
always going to be a balance. I mean, I do think stability, security, availability has to be top, right? You could have the best
Yeah.
features in the world, but if your product keeps crashing,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
going to lose
Exactly.
your customers. So you've
Yeah.
got to always have that. I think I loved one of your blog posts about managing risk. And I think that
Yeah.
factors into it, right? Are you going to accept,
Yeah.
what level of risk are you willing to accept in
Yeah.
decisions on tech debt
Yeah.
features?
That's a great way of framing it. I did start to feel personally that like I became way more of like a risk manager than anything else. Do you sometimes feel that way leading product or like, I mean, there's a creative aspect of our jobs, but like so much of it is just like risk mitigation,
Yeah.
or balancing risk or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I was reprioritizing things daily, right? I mean,
Hmm.
just things that you work on, what the tasks I was working on, and then also just like within the product itself, because the market was changing, customers were changing, you're getting new
Yeah,
information. So I think the role of product is just a constant balancing act and trying to keep all those
always. Yeah,
spinning, right? And
yeah,
the push and the pull, and knowing when to push back and when to let new stuff in. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it is a lot of risk management and decisions in that regard. Some are little decisions and some are really big ones.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like what kind of, I'm curious, like what kind of projects really like get you excited, like these days, for example, like I love like mentoring startups that are in the early stage, and they're maybe AI startups, which is obviously like the hot topic these days. Are there particular like kinds of products that get you super excited, the creative juices flowing kind of thing?
yeah. So the company I'm with now is it's an analytics and automation platform that it's kind of
Okay.
like 5 products in one. but it's very different from my previous role where we had this whole portfolio and everything was kind of connected loosely, right? But it wasn't a single product.
Yeah.
I love when things just work seamlessly together. It's one interface, but you can access, 5 or 6 different functions,
Right.
and being very specific about the problems you're solving for and the market you're solving for. I think that when you do have some guardrails on, it gives you a ton of freedom to really get creative, as opposed
Yeah.
to trying to be all things to all people, right?
Right. Yeah. And you were telling me a little bit about a project that you were working on to migrate a product. Is that right?
Right. So in my role, I've actually been am in a consultant role for a really large healthcare company right now. And there's kind of two things that we're working on. One is very tactical. It's a software migration from a platform that's going offline at the end of the year, migrating the outbound dialing functionality to a new platform. So
Okay.
there's a hard deadline, a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah.
We came in to try to leverage our expertise to help get that project across the line. So
That's awesome.
that's super tactical. It's getting there. There's still every day there's a new speed bump and a new problem to solve. But more broadly, we're also looking at this in the context of a broader, maybe product management overhaul or new product framework, on how to, kind of better manage their products going forward. Because we're finding
Okay.
everything is very project based at this
Right.
company, and they're kind of in this cycle that they're having trouble digging out of.
Hmm.
There's a lot of other platform migrations. Their
Yeah.
sales is throwing stuff over the fence. They kind of hire a lot of contractors and then let them leave. So we're trying to think about broadly how can
Yeah.
we really help them transform this business and give them that framework.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because you said project versus product, and it's such a common thing for product leaders to have to deal with that challenge of like coming into a company, it's all project based. You're trying to morph them over to product. They don't even know what product means half the time. They're like, what are you talking about? What's the same thing? All that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, how do you best go about helping a company like that, in your opinion? Let's say it's like a mid-market company, $50 million, $100 million. Like, how do you help a company switch their mindset into like truly modern product management?
Yeah. So, the people that we talk to, a lot of them are open to change. That's great, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes people aren't,
Hmm.
um,
Yep.
but they haven't been able make that change real yet. So, I
Yeah.
think it's a couple things. One, you realize it is going to take time, right? Especially at large organizations.
Oh, yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
what we're kind of doing a couple of things. One, we're looking at, how can we prove the value of this change and the efficiencies that they're losing and the
Mm.
rework that they're going through and the expense that it's causing them to think of things like projects instead of products, right? So
Mm.
really exposing the value lost by using the current model. In the meantime, kind of developing that framework, finding a pilot program to prove it out,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
So get a core set of people that are
Yep.
really interested in this change, and apply the framework that we're proposing, and then show the value of it. Or if it doesn't work, right, tweak it and try again. So that's kind of how we're going to approach
Right.
it right now, because you can't, move a huge ship in one go. It does take time.
Yeah.
It takes a couple
And
pilots, I think.
it does. It does. A pilot is a great idea. Um, do you find that a lot of your work in this, like under the umbrella of like transformation, is it a lot of change management involved in that? Because I find that it's a tremendous amount of change management, and you almost need to be an expert on change management because just telling someone what product management is, they'll even look at that and know the benefits, but they won't take the steps to do it, right? How do you think about sort of change management in our world of product?
Yeah, I think that's at least my personal experience has been change management, and it's hard, right? And it does take time. It takes some trial and error. There's some
Mm.
folks that will continue to kind of resisted, even if they don't
Yeah.
actively seem like they are. Just habits, right?
That's the worst.
So recognizing, yeah, that it takes
Mhm.
a lot of communication, a lot of coordination, a lot of confidence, a lot of proof points.
Yeah.
Kind of what's in it for me, right? Communicating that to everybody, like this is why we're changing.
Yeah.
It's a ton of change management because you're dealing with
Yeah.
people, right? I think engineers picking up a new technology is so much more straightforward than people picking up
Yeah.
a new process
Yes.
they're working
God,
on.
that is so good, Lindsay. That is so good. Engineers picking up a new technology is some human dealing with some tech, but on the product side, it's like human to human, and that's such a complex thing, so it's much more harder. I've never heard it really said like that. That's awesome. Um, do you know, I find in my own career, I feel like I ping pong sometimes between being a teacher and being an executor. And I wonder, right now you're doing so much teaching. Is that more fun or is the execution side more fun for you?
So I do like to dig into the details in the sense that I want to I want to be authentic in that I know what I'm talking about. I don't want to fake it till I make it. Like I actually do want to
Hmm.
make sure I know enough so I can
Right.
um, speak the right speak to my engineering counterparts. But then also same thing with business because product. I think you have to be able to speak business and speak engineering equally well. I do get maybe a little bit bogged down in the details, probably more than I should
Me
um,
too.
at my
Yeah.
level. But these days, what I love to do is I love road mapping. I love thinking
Mm.
what's next, what's
Yes.
coming in the next
Nice.
quarter, what's coming in the next
Yeah.
year, and mapping that out and doing the discovery. And so I do
I
like that
know.
tactical part of it. Um, and I don't have any direct reports right now, but previously in my previous roles, I had a team, and I did get a ton of satisfaction when I was able to serve as a mentor, right? And
Yeah.
see the growth in folks in products. I brought
Yeah.
somebody over from product ops to product management,
Nice.
and that was really
Yeah.
satisfying as well.
It is pretty nice to see the transformation all work out. That feeling is a great feeling for sure. You said something just now about loving road mapping. Like, I'm so glad you said that because that's such an awesome and creative thing. But I wonder, this is a hard question, but a lot of times you get into organizations where the business side wants the entire roadmap for the year.
Mhm.
And as you know, that's a tall order. It's not always possible to do that. What do you do in that situation? Like, what's your approach to that? Because the business is like, give me exact dates for the next 12 months of what you're going to release, when it's going to go out, what's going to be in it. And you're sitting there like, well, half of this stuff has discovery that needs to be done for it. How are we going to create this roadmap? What do you do in those situations?
So that was one of the biggest things I had to learn in my career was be really careful about giving dates. So I made the mistake
Yeah,
often, maybe less so to execs within the company, but to customers, right? I
yeah,
was very confident and or maybe overly confident and optimistic. And then something always comes up. And so I had to learn that lesson a few times
me too.
to realize that, yeah, so we would kind of think generally in quarters, calendar quarters,
Yeah.
what can be delivered, and so we would be as committal as we can within the next quarter.
Mm,
And then as you get further out, 6 months out, 12 months out, this is planned, but it's not committed. And
hmm.
so we plan to work on this in this quarter, but I'm not committing to deliver this in this
A
quarter.
certain date. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It seems like that's always such a like point of tension between the business and product and even engineering. I remember earlier in my career, way earlier in my career, in my early 20s, I would just, walk around the office throwing around dates. And my team would be like, Bobby, I don't know if we can do this by that point. So I started learning. I was like, wait a minute, don't do that, don't do that. But it seems like, and this is just my personal opinion, that there's these frameworks out there that like they'll help you organize a roadmap so you have like aspirational and like in the 9 to 12 month period it'll be like all aspirational stuff, and then like the 0 to 3 month period it'll be committed dates and stuff like that. And it seems like when you first come out with this framework at a company, the business side, the whole ELT is like, yeah, this is awesome. This is great. This is how to do it. We get it. You know, you got to do discovery work before you can commit to long-term dates. And like 5 minutes later, it's completely out the door. And they're like, Bobby, Lindsay, Mishka, what are you guys
Yeah.
going to do again? Like 6 months from now? And it's like, oh my God, it's a continuous education almost that you have to do across the board, right?
Yeah. Especially if you get in front of sales or in front of a customer.
Mm,
It's yeah, it's
yeah.
so that was actually one area where, like I said, I felt like I had a pretty well-rounded background, but I was missing the sales component. And I did get advice from a mentor once. He said, look, if you ever want to be in a CEO role or entrepreneur role, like you need that direct customer sales type experience. So I took that advice with my most
Mm.
recent role. So my title is customer service director or customer success
Oh,
director.
wow. Okay.
So I'm actually kind of
That's cool.
gonna jump into that and be more direct customer facing. Now, in my role as kind of product leader, I did get a lot of customer interaction, but I wasn't the single point of entry within
Sure.
the company. So
Is there something that was really eye-opening for you when you moved into that sort of customer-facing role
well,
based on what you had before in product?
so there was always when in product, right, I could come present the roadmap and listen to the customer, and then I could like get off the call and not have to worry about it. Right. The customer success manager had to deal with any fallout. No, I'm just kidding. We were partners there, but yeah. So ask me again in 6 months because I'm still pretty new to this role. And I jumped right in directly to this consultant role for this healthcare company. So ultimately, I mean, I am embedded with this customer, so I couldn't be more close. It's just a little different because I'm not selling our product yet, right? I'm just selling myself and my experience at this
Hmm.
point. So ask
That's
me.
really cool, though, that you got into a sort of adjacent, I guess, role. It's different. I've never been in customer success before. How is it so far? Like, how are you liking it?
Like I said, just kind of jumped right into the deep end with this healthcare
Yeah,
company, and so
that's
really
so
laser
cool.
focused on this migration project. I think once we kind of get over the hurdle and successfully deliver this, I'll go back to Success KPI as this customer success director.
That's
This
awesome.
healthcare company may be my main client at that point.
Yeah,
I'll probably get a
that's
couple more,
cool.
but I'm excited because I think I get it. I get the role. I've, partnered with people in this role. So I
Yeah,
know I can contribute, but I
yeah,
also have an opportunity to kind of learn and expand my skill set and learn from some
yeah.
other leaders in that. So,
I had this like really great experience with a customer success leader one time. I was in an ed tech company as a CTO, and we were having all kinds of problems with some API that for a company that was really interdependent into our ecosystem. And I got on the phone with their head of customer success, and she just like kind of solved all of our problems. And then fast forward like 2 years later, I see that she's the CEO of the company. I feel like I want to connect you to this, but her name is Trish Sparks, and she is the CEO of Clever, which is a
I
ed
know
tech
Clever.
company.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
My son
She
used it.
came, okay, yeah, it's in like 50, 60, 70% of American schools, some insane market share. But it was one of the rare times you saw a customer success person go into the CEO role. Just a brilliant, she's a brilliant person. I want to like introduce you guys or something on LinkedIn. She's so awesome. Um,
That's cool.
Customer success and product kind of like, are they frenemies, do you think, in some way?
um, I think you no I think you've got to be more friends than
Enemies.
enemies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had some good relationships with our CSMs when I was in product.
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely have to treat it as a partnership for sure.
What about here's another controversial question. What about product and engineering? How do you make those two get along well together? Do you have any secret tips to doing that?
So it took a while in our transformation, like I said, to kind of the balance of power had to move from engineering to product. And it took a while for people to kind of see the value there and build those relationships. And so what I've found
Yeah.
has worked really well, at least me personally, is we had kind of a one-to-one connection with the product leader for that portfolio and the engineering leader. And
Right.
if you have that relationship and you guys kind of understand each other and can, shorthand each other and not have to worry about all the,
Right.
niceties, right? You can be honest with each other and be authentic. It's huge, right?
Right.
Then all your teams can work well together, and then
Hmm.
elevating that a little bit more. I think a huge lesson learned is from a leadership level, so CTO or SVP level, engineering
Hmm.
and product. Those leaders need to be in sync, and when they're communicating down to
Right.
the teams, it's done together. We did that a lot. We weren't trying to silo product from engineering. Um, and so we would
Right.
hear the same thing, whether we talked to our CTO or our SVP of product, right?
Yeah.
They may have
Yeah.
disagreed behind doors, but they ultimately got to the same thing, same place that
Right.
would then get communicated out to the teams.
Well, that's great. Yeah, when you can create that like kind of like bridge between the two and get them in sync, that's pretty incredible. You can do some great things. Um, do you find that now product management is starting to evolve in a different way since the sort of like popularity of Chat GPT and AI and everything that's come about from that? Does that enter into your day to day? Do you use these tools? Do you encourage your team to use them, or like is it not so much of a factor in your work?
I think it depends on what company you're at and what role you're at. I
Yeah,
use ChatGPT instead of Google, right? Just to use
right.
the tool, right, and see how it goes. I've tried a couple of the others. Um, Not relying on it hardcore on a day to day basis
Mm,
in my current role. Would absolutely encourage people to use the tools and try them out, because I think, and again, depending on what type of company you're at, whether they're hiring more kind of athletes that can do a lot of things versus
mm,
specialists. If you're at a maturity where you
right.
can hire specialists, then I think it's super important that you can go deep in the
Yeah,
technologies. You know which ones are better for certain use cases, and you can really kind of have that kind of deep technical knowledge, so you can influence
yeah.
what the products use. Versus, I think at my level, it's more still um, awareness and understanding of like how to apply AI in use cases, but not necessarily dictating which AI to use or
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
algorithms underneath, right?
Absolutely. A lot of product people that I talk to, they're painting a picture of the future where, like, there's not that many engineers and it's more product people who are deciding on what to build. Do you subscribe to that idea? Do you think that's going to happen eventually? Because you see all these tools, like Cursor is a recent one that's gone crazy and stuff. These tools that can code, that can do QA, that can do, I mean, cloud ops, like insane amounts of stuff. You know this, and are we headed to a world where it's like a bunch of product people with a whole bunch of tools and they're just using the tools and building software exactly the way that they want? Is that the future that we're going to see?
I don't think so. I mean, I think engineering is going to evolve. Yes, I think that there's tools to help with the coding and help with the QA and help with the, website creation, right? But it might evolve into something that we don't know yet, right?
We don't
I
know
think
yet.
that
Yeah,
that
exactly.
mindset of an engineer, that mindset of a
Yeah,
coder, is still
yeah,
going to be super valuable, right? Now, I
yeah.
do think, like, product tools, right? We product managers might be able to use the tools to prototype things themselves, right? So you don't have as much reliance. So maybe things
Mm,
can just accelerate more quickly
hmm.
in
Right.
innovation. But I don't know. Do you
What
see
about the reverse of that?
that?
Yeah, I think personally that somebody said this to me the other day. They were like, Bobby, you remember webmasters? And I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard that term in ages. It's been like
Yeah.
20 years since I heard that term. So I agree with you that roles are going to dramatically change. Absolutely, no question about it. In product and engineering, both. I subscribe to the idea that I think somebody said it like who had a reason for saying it. I think it was the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen Huang, who said something like AI is underhyped, not overhyped and stuff. And I kind of lean towards that, to be honest. I feel like I use Claude and OpenAI mainly, and it is just too mind blowing to deny. And all the developers who are my friends over the years are just like using it every single day, and these like rock star developers are becoming 10x more powerful. So I feel like some part of me feels like if it took a team of like two product managers and like seven developers to build this product that can now in the future be done with one product person, one engineer sitting down together and just that is a really interesting background. That was funny. Mishka, did you do that?
Firework.
Fireworks. Okay.
I think
That
it was
was random.
your hand motions, yeah.
Okay. It's funny. But yeah, I think that smaller teams are going to build more software. I think the volume of software will increase in the world tenfold, hundredfold. I think you'll think of an idea with your team of like two people, like
Yeah.
in 3 months it'll be done versus 3 years, that kind of thing. But I also am very aware of like, and I'm sure you are too, at how slow companies actually move in deciding anything. So the bigger the company is, usually the slower they move. So even if the tools are there, that doesn't necessarily translate into like business results super fast versus before, just because you have the AI, because the decision making processes in these companies, they just stay super slow and take their time to figure everything out.
That's really insightful. Yeah, I didn't think about that because you follow all the innovation and stuff that's happening in light speed, right? With these internet startup or not just with AI startups. And then the gap between these large companies actually implementing some of that technology,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. The layers of approvals and thinking it
Yeah.
through and decision
Negotiation.
making,
Yeah.
right? By the
Yeah.
time they
Same.
make that decision, there's,
Yeah.
10 companies have gone out of business.
That's right. That's right. Like this year, when we're all sitting down doing our 2025 planning or whatever, in Q4 and stuff, AI is not going to help that conversation, that negotiation between 15 different stakeholders on what should be in the roadmap and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of like human components to it all that are just going to take their time and stuff. So it's like the innovation is like up here, but
Yeah.
then the like adoption is like down here. And I think that gap is going to take some time for sure. It's pretty cool being in product though, with the world changing with AI. It's a pretty cool thing. Um, Switching gears here a little bit to a few tougher questions. Here's some nuggets maybe that you can impart to our audience over here. You've been running product teams for a while. What's something you would never do again? What's a decision that you would wish to undo or never do again?
I don't know. Pass. Next question.
That's fair. You don't
I'll have
have
to
to
think about
answer
that.
it.
Yeah, that definitely put me on the spot. Yeah, I'll let you know if we can come back to that.
I've got one,
What about you?
which
Yeah.
is I think I would. I think there's been times where I've hired people because I projected onto them some ideal wish for what they were.
Hmm.
And I was under some pressure to do the hire and I just like pulled the trigger on it. And so that whole thing about like hire slow, fire fast, I definitely subscribe to that now because I've been burned before. Hiring certain people that you just like you think are going to be amazing because of your own kind of impressions that you want them to be a certain way. I think that's probably the biggest thing I would go back and change is like hiring too quickly and basing it too much on instinct, perhaps. Mishka, what about you? Anything you would want to undo?
Every life choice that ever led me into security. Um, that's a flip answer. For me, it probably has to do with learning the difference between delegation and abdicating responsibility. Early in my career, I did not, for whatever reason, I didn't really draw that distinction, and it took me a little while when I first became a manager to realize that's a thing that you have to take into account. There is a difference.
Yeah,
Really good one. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think I one thing I would think of maybe a little bit earlier in my career is doing something just because your boss told you to, right? Or the
Mm,
leader of your group told you to, right? That's not a good reason, right? You need to have, again, as a product manager, you need to have your own
right.
reasons for doing something. Now, if you agree with them and there's a good reason behind it, that's great. But if you can't defend, if your only defense for why are you working on this is my boss or the GM told me to, then that's not
Yeah,
a reason.
that's a really good one. And it's easy. It's like some of these things are like easy to backslide into. You're so busy, you're doing all this work, and your CEO comes around and is like, all right, need this done, or whatever. You're like, all right, sure, I'll just throw it on the list of to-dos or whatever. But you really got to think about it and then arm them with the right framework for thinking about their ask and stuff in a way that's diplomatic and maybe leads them to a slightly different ask. But absolutely, 100% agree with you. Shouldn't just go blindly doing things without knowing why you're doing it, what the implications are of it. Which is a good segue into the topic of dysfunction. This is something I'm really curious about. You've managed a portfolio of dozens of products before. It's so many different, I'm sure, customers and stakeholders, internal, external. Sometimes companies become dysfunctional, larger companies, perhaps, once you get out of that startup phase, maybe. Let's say you're a product person, maybe somebody in our audience is coming into an organization where they've got to run product. They've been hired. It's their first day on the job, and they instantly realize that, oh my God, this company has a lot of dysfunction. Like maybe the product engineering team doesn't get along. Maybe the business doesn't know what it wants. There's no business strategy. That's a thing that happens, right? Or another example is like, sales is running the ship and doesn't care what anybody else is saying. How should a product leader deal with those kinds of situations, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think getting advocates, getting data, building relationships to um, kind of see if other people are kind of in agreement with that, and thinking about an example or a pilot program where you could prove the opposite, right? Like so
Mm,
don't just complain about the problem. You've got to have some sort of solution to go along
yeah,
with it. So build a little consortium of folks that kind of are like-minded.
yeah,
I think it's tougher if you're, entry level, right? You're probably not
sure,
going to have as much influence, but if you're, you've got kind of some leadership clout and you can, work with counterparts, maybe in, cross functionally. That's one of my favorite parts about product is that even if you're product centric, you still have to work and understand and be empathetic to and have good relationships with everybody that's cross functional.
hmm,
And so getting, kind of getting their perspective and not trying to boil the ocean, right? What pain points are we trying to solve? Let's pick one,
yeah,
right? Let
yeah,
me not
exactly,
try to flip
yeah,
flip the ship in one go.
yep. Those are good thoughts. I like all of them. I agree with all of them. I think sometimes it takes new people. I've noticed, like, if somehow if the company's been dysfunctional for like a long period of time, nothing sometimes will work other than just finding new people from the outside, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's hard, I think, for product people, for any executive making those kinds of hard decisions and changes, which is why I think some companies stayed dysfunctional for so long because we're just like, why isn't this working and stuff? Well, got the wrong people on the ship. You got to on the bus. You got to have the right people on the bus. I think for me, that kind of starts with that. I also think like it's exactly what you said though about like prove one thing out that's working. Get three people together, product and engineering person and a salesperson or a business person, achieve one thing. That can be the kernel of like a very functional organization that eventually can kind of grow from that. So I think that's really good. Last question, and just picking your brain here a little bit around, when you get to the executive ranks of product and so much is riding on your decisions, how should product leaders think about the kinds of risks they're taking. Like, what kinds of risks should product leaders take? You can't always play it safe. Every roadmap has to have 10% of risk.
Mhm.
What should go in that swim lane of risk? Like, what kinds of projects, or how should a product person think about risk in a roadmap?
Yeah, I think I know you've got some thoughts on this as well, but it's what, so there could be, what am I going to defer? So if I take
Mm,
this on, I'm taking more risk later. Either that I don't deliver something else on time because I'm bringing
right,
something in. It could be risk of innovation. So I want to try something new. I want to do a new technology. I want to give engineering a little bit of leeway to try something new and carving that out. And what if it fails and it's a waste of time and money, right? Like that's certainly a risk. And I think that depends again back on the kind of maturity of the product and the business that you're in. How much of that can you take on and still be okay, right?
right.
If
Yeah,
something
exactly.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think, we really looked at, we wanted to help sales sell and bring in new
Mm,
business,
mm,
obviously. We tried to limit the hard commitments that we made, to limit that risk. If we took too many things on and said, yes, we'll deliver it in this month or this quarter. So we tried to be really, really careful when we took that on, whether it was a contract, typically these were contractual agreements. So I think product managers always have to make sure they've got that,
factor that in. Yeah,
factor that in,
exactly.
have that forum with sales. Hopefully you have a good
Yeah,
relationship with sales.
yeah,
You know what type of requests are coming in, when you can
right,
push back, when you need to take that commitment, but know that you have kind of a limit on
right.
those.
Yeah, exactly. I find it very difficult for myself personally, even um, to sometimes take risks at the right strategic time, if you will. I think it's almost like a superpower that people have. Like, when am I going to take a risk on this, and how is that risk going to manifest itself, possibly in the negative or in the positive in a business? Um, but I think we all have to get good at it. And I find that product people tend to be very conservative, product leaders, too conservative. I feel like it's almost that we're doing a disservice to the company if we're not taking some risk in the roadmap. You know, if we're playing it safe for the whole year and every single project, then okay, we're probably not going to discover some new growth opportunity or market expansion or something like that. So whenever I talk to product people, I'm always encouraging them to take just a tiny bit of risk. It doesn't have to be like mind blowing, but like you were saying, the pilot programs and things like that you can do. But I feel like lots of product people get stuck in this situation where they're almost like, not, in their mind, they're not allowed to innovate. But I think if they are clever enough, they can almost insert some innovation in the roadmap if they frame it the right way and organize in a way where the success potential is pretty high. And then I've seen some great product leaders like build, just like you were saying, that you kind of build on that innovation work, and over time you sort of make innovation much more of a thing in a company, and risk taking becomes more acceptable. The appetite for risk goes up because you're kind of successful in taking strategic risk. So anyway, thank you so
Excellent
much.
advice. Yeah, that's really, really good advice for product management. Yeah.
Lindsay, I want to thank you. I think we're at the end of our time. It was a pleasure talking with you, and as always, learned so much in our discussions, and I'm sure our listeners will have taken a lot from this as well.
Thanks. I was honored to be asked. I know that you've had some really, really brilliant people on this podcast. So I wish you future success in all your future
Thank you
conversations.
so much. You were full of your own wisdom here. I'm sure a lot of young product leaders will appreciate all the stuff that you kind of imparted today. And Mishka, I want to thank you as well as always, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I'll see you next time on the Technocratic podcast, and in the meantime, keep the shark swimming.